Our call to community is titled Bold and Courageous Together. It comes to us from Erica A. Hewitt. The word courage comes from the Latin cor, which means heart. According to poet Mark Nepo, the original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core, a striking concept that reinforces the belief found in almost all traditions that living from the center is what enables us to face whatever life has to offer. To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. This is our work as a religious community, to encourage one another, to be bold in engaging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible. With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. And now we light the chalice within our hearts, the symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls. Our opening thought this morning comes from Maya Angelou, and she writes, "If you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be." Our first reading comes from Gleb Tsipursky and his article, "Bad News About the Pandemic. We're Not Getting Back to Normal Anytime Soon." He writes, "Just as problematic is another dangerous judgment error that cognitive neuroscientists call normalcy bias. This mental blind spot refers to the fact that our gut reactions drive us to feel that the future, or at least in the short and medium term of the next couple of years, will function in roughly the same way as the past, normally. As a result, we tend to vastly underestimate both the possibility and impact of a disaster striking us. Moreover, we will rush to get back to normal, even when we should be preparing for the aftershocks or continuation of the disaster." A meditation for this morning, written by Nathan C. Walker, that he titles A Survival Meditation. Breathing in, I am aware of my pain. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my pain. Breathing in, I am aware of my past. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my past. Breathing in, I am aware of my anger. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my anger. Breathing in, I am aware of my despair. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my despair. Breathing in, I am aware of peace. Breathing out, I am aware that I am worthy of peace. Breathing in, I am aware of love. Breathing out, I am aware that I am worthy of love. Breathing in, I am aware of joy. Breathing out, I am aware that I am an agent of joy. Breathing in, I am aware of hope. Breathing out, I am aware that I am an agent of hope. Breathing in, I am aware. Our second reading is titled, There's No Going Back to Normal, by Ikemini Uwan, who writes, striving to return to an old normal would ensure that the mechanisms of oppression keep turning. We are not going back to normal. We are pushing toward a new normal, one that is more sustainable and equitable than the one we left behind, one in which everyone might flourish. However, the new normal is contingent upon our willingness to learn the practice of letting go of gone things. As the poet Upile Chisala eloquently put it, we will not be the same when this pandemic and this revolution end. How can we be, when more than 150,000 people in the United States have perished from COVID-19 thus far, when so many black women and men have been reduced to hashtags? The collective grief is exhausting and disorienting, but grieve we must. This is the work our souls require. Though we can't go back, there's nothing wrong with grieving what was. Even as we work to accept it, we can't help but lament what is. Let's give our tears to dreams deferred and decimated by this pandemic, so that we can be numbered among those working toward a new normal. During times like these, when we are experiencing so many things falling apart around us, it is natural for us to long for normality. It makes perfect sense that we would want to get back to normal as quickly as we possibly can. In the face of an ecological crisis, an economic crisis, a political crisis, and now 6 months into the public health crisis of a global pandemic, which makes it difficult to even think about some of the other challenges that we are currently facing, it is more than understandable that we long for things to get back to normal. Normal is not this, and almost anything is better than this. But if all we do is get back to normal, are we really getting where we need to be? Isn't it the case that the normal that we've been living is both unjust and unsustainable? Isn't it the case that the normal that we have been living is actually a huge contributing factor to the crisis and chaos that our human community and our ecological community are now facing? The crisis of our current moment provides an opportunity for us to take a more critical look at what we have considered normal up to this point, and to decide what is worth keeping and what we should help to find its way into the dustbin of history. We don't want to get back to a normal that is a normal of environmental racism, medical bankruptcies, and employer-based health care that can be lost as fast as the spread of the pandemic. We don't want to get back to the normal of extreme income inequality, unequal access to health care and education that perpetuates generational poverty, and a criminal justice system that enslaves people of color behind walls of systemic injustice. We don't want to get back to the normal in which essential workers are paid unlivable wages and forced to work 2 or 3 jobs to avoid living on the streets. We don't want to get back to the normal of growing white nationalism, family separations, kids in cages, exploitation of migrant workers, and walls of racism. We don't want to get back to the normal of unsustainable overconsumption, torture chambers of concentrated animal feed operations, and climate crisis that is hurling us towards climate chaos and threatens so much life on Earth. If normal is all that we can get back to as we work through this pandemic, then we simply perpetuate a world in which the most vulnerable among us and the planet itself continue to suffer. And we miss the opportunity to bring regeneration to our human and our ecological communities. The systems and structures that make so many people of color and other persons who don't have adequate access to economic opportunity and quality health care to be much more vulnerable to this virus must be transformed if there is to be anything approaching resurrection from these days of death. I want us all to get through this pandemic with the least amount of suffering and death, but I don't want to get back to the normal that perpetuates the open and festering wound of systemic inequality and injustice in our communities. I don't want to get back to the normal of continuing the 6th great extinction of life on our planet, and the only great extinction caused by one species. I don't want to get back to the normal of creating an unlivable climate for generations to come. I don't want to get back to the normal of losing another 50% of wildlife over the next 50 years, because we've lost 50% of wildlife over the past 50 years. I don't want to get back to the normal of allowing corporations to make trillions of dollars off the devastation of our planet. getting back to this kind of normal is continuing on the path of chaos instead of creating a new path to community. Towards the end of his tragically shortened life, caused by the bullet of a white supremacist, Martin Luther King Jr. questioned whether our world house, the house in which we all live, was headed for chaos or for community. He reminded the world of the fierce urgency of now in relation to the global challenges that we faced. And he warned that there is such a thing as too late when it comes to making the choice between chaos and community. King maintained that the path towards beloved community calls for recognizing that we all have inherited a large house, a great world house, in which we all have to live together, black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu. A family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. King articulated that living together in peace with justice would require a revolution of values in order to overcome the triple evils of racism, materialism, and militarism. This week, we lay to rest John Lewis, a person who spent his life searching for and working for the beloved community in this world. John Lewis was inspired to work against that which was normal, when what was normal was also oppressive to the most vulnerable within our society. Lewis did not accept the normal of persons of color being segregated from the rest of society. He did not accept the normal of persons of color having their voting rights suppressed. He did not accept it as normal in the 1950s and 1960s, and he did not accept it as normal in 2020. Lewis did not accept white supremacy as normal. Rather, he worked for the equality of all persons in the human community. He did not accept white nationalism as normal. Rather, he shared a vision that we are not just members of the American house, but we are also members of the world house. The path, which many of us have seen as normal, has actually been a path leading us all to chaos rather than community. The pandemic simply made this even more obvious than before. It is not normal that persons of color should die at much higher rates in a pandemic. It is not normal that persons of color should be the victims of police brutality at much higher rates than other persons. It is not normal that billionaires should be prospering during a pandemic while millions of other persons are at risk of losing everything. It is not normal to have millions of persons in our prisons. It is not normal for us to live in such a way as to leave future generations an unlivable climate. We cannot go back to an unjust and unsustainable normal that is actually chaos for the many, for the sake of the enrichment of the few. So what should we do? I think John Lewis has pointed us in a direction away from the current chaos towards a future of community, a future of beloved community. As we work against the evils of racism, poverty, militarism, and environmental destruction, we must be willing, each of us must be willing to get in trouble, good trouble, and create a revolution of values that will lead us away from the chaos of the normal to a new day of beloved community. Amen. Every week, Hope Church gives away our entire offering plate to a generosity recipient chosen monthly by our congregation and by our outreach committee. In August, our generosity recipient is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Here's their mission. UUSC advances human rights and social justice around the world. partnering with those who confront unjust power structures, and mobilizing to challenge oppressive policies. You can give online at our website, www.hopeuu.org, or mail a check to the church. We thank you for giving. Our closing words this morning are from Michel Foucault. If you are not like everybody else, then you are abnormal. If you are abnormal, then you are sick. These three categories, not being like everybody else, not being normal, and being sick, are in fact very different, but have been reduced to the same thing. And let us extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.